Diana, I got your number from your resume on LinkedIn. My name is Sarah, and I'm an old student of. And like you, we had a relationship. I don't know the circumstances of your relationship with him, but it concerns me to see his behavior continued long after I knew him. I'm curious if you would be willing to talk to me about your experience. If not, I respect that.
Sarah, I am at a loss of words, but also have so much to say. Yes, I would love to talk to you about this. Were you a student in Iowa? This is Diana.
This is Sarah.
And this is Blooming After Grooming, our podcast.
Should we get into it?
Oh my God, let's get into it. I'm really excited to talk about this Big Women episode. Welcome back to Blooming After Grooming.
Big Women needs a theme song. It's like, Big Women helping other women. Big Women. Yeah.
Yes. So I thought of calling this episode Big Women because I finally read the book, classic book, Little Women by, what's her name? Mary Louise Alcott, something like that. We'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, classic women or classic book about four sisters who are growing up when a woman had limited options, had to marry into families with resources and whatever. So if you're familiar with the story, Josephine, who's the youngest, no, she's not. She's one of the sisters, Meg, Beth, and then Joe. And Joe is like the tomboy, and she has interests, and she likes to write. And her sisters are always saying things like, Joe, you and your boyish ways, you'll never find a man like that. And dost thou behave? They don't really talk like that, but basically say like you behave in such ways that are unbecoming of a little lady. So we met a lot of just really impactful and significant women. Like shortly, I was doing my research for this episode, Sarah, like it was within days, within weeks, we met with a lot of big women. You got the little women, right, of a different era who have to be a certain way. And now it's decades later and
they're taking up space. They're being big. They're being big women.
Thank you.
And they're not worried. They're not worried about their braids getting burnt off or their petticoats getting dirty at the dance. So
right. Or their gloves, like, you know.
Oh, the gloves. Missing. The amount of talk about gloves in the book Little Women. Let me tell you something. I struggled with that book. Struggled real hard with that book because I was like, bitch, I don't want to hear about your gloves. I don't care about your gloves.
It took me, I think, 5 months to finish that book. It's a pretty dense book. But anyway, yes. So today we're going to talk about big women who take up space and are doing really, really fucking important work in the area of survivor advocacy and victim services and policy change. We met them pretty shortly after our first meeting.
Yes, we did.
Can I do just a quick timeline recap of
Please do
that? Okay, let's take it back to January 14th, 2022. Before I even got that text from Sarah. If you recall, I had talked about how my aha moment was in spring-ish time, late winter, early spring of 2021. And I was processing it with my therapist. It was in December, I think, of 2021. So months after I had my aha moment and started talking about in therapy. This was still COVID times. So I was a school counselor and we were still mostly remote. We had a guest presenter come in to talk about trafficking and warning signs to look out for in young girls, especially, and grooming. And I don't remember much of that presentation because I was just it was stirring up something in me, all like the slides about grooming in particular. And so I reached out to the woman who did the presentation, the virtual presentation. Her first name is Meredith, and she worked at the time for the Refuge for Women in Chicago. And so I reached out to her in January and I said, hello, I don't know how to begin other than I was groomed by my high school teacher who I spent 8 years with in a relationship. It has been about 6 years since I left him. The realization of the reality of what the relationship was only hit me over the last year, and I've been doing work in therapy to process that part of my life. My therapist asked me how I am, quote, resourcing, unquote, my next steps, which includes reaching out to this person and possibly to their place of work, which is something I have decided I want to do. Or someone from this organization presented at my work recently, and I wanted to reach out to see if there's any support or guidance that could be offered as I continue this. I don't really know what I'm looking for or where to start, so I apologize that this cannot be more specific about what I need other than help. Thank you for your time. Please let me know if you have questions. And then I got a response from Meredith, and we actually ended up meeting up, and she is giving me some resources. Like, I didn't know what I was asking for, right? Like, I reached out and I was like, hey, there was this presentation and this thing happened to me and I don't know what to do. And I feel like this is a safe place and just wondering if you can help me out, feeling like I opened myself in that way ended up really paying off, because meeting Meredith is how I learned about Faith Colson, who we'll talk about. Talking to Faith is how we met so many other people. Like, there's so many things that have happened, and it was kind of emotional going back and reading through the early days, like before I even met you, of what I was trying to do.
I think that's another reason we're doing this podcast, right? Is figuring out what we were even trying to do after you and I met and we had our first talk and we decided that we both were like, yeah, we are going to move forward with coming forward with what happened to us and trying to have the teacher held accountable. Just even trying to navigate, like, what does that mean? And what does that look like? And how do you do that? And where do you start? Was such a trippy experience. And there were so many stops and goes and stops and goes. And no, you have to wait for this to get done. And no, this isn't the person you want to be talking to. This is the person you want to be talking to. I think that's partially what has motivated me, at least, to do the podcast, is like, if this is like a path you're trying to go down, like, it is complicated. And obviously every state's going to be different and every situation is going to be different as well. But just kind of having, it would have been so helpful for us, I think, to have some kind of framework to go off of. And clearly, like you just said, you didn't even know what you were asking for. Like, you're just like, I need help. I don't know what I need help with, but I would appreciate help. It's crazy. And then just how willing pretty much every single person has been along the way to help us,
Yeah.
has also been a very cool experience. So yeah, how do you want to start your roll call of big women?
Well, I definitely wanted to start with Meredith because her open and welcoming and super helpful response to my email, she's the first one I want to start with. So Sarah, you texted me April 5th. We met virtually on the 7th, so 2 days later. 2 days after that, you sent me your first draft of your letter. We'll talk about that at some point. You also sent me a Fiona Apple song. Do you remember?
Oh, dude, because Fetch the Bolt Cutters came out that same year. I think maybe it was earlier, because that was like my COVID survival album, and you and I met in 2022. So I guess it'd been out for a while, but that fucking Fiona Apple album is phenomenal. And I feel like really encapsulated this experience for me in a very weird way. So yes, I do remember sending that to you.
Yeah.
So is Fiona Apple your second big woman?
Fiona Apple she gets a nod. She gets an honorable mention because that song called Newspaper, it's just so gritty and like industrial and moving. I have a whole email folder around like all the steps that we've taken since our first meeting. And I saw it and I wanted to mention that was something that after we met and we had both shared a little, but also a lot about each other, receiving that song just felt like we were connected in already such a way. So I just wanted to mention that before we get into our next big woman. Okay, so I had reached out to Meredith, who did that presentation about trafficking and grooming at the school where I was working. She is the one who encouraged me to look up Faith Colson and Faith's Law. And Faith's Law actually had just passed in the state of Illinois.
Can you tell us real quick? Can you tell us real quick what Faith's Law is?
So Faith's Law defines grooming and sexual misconduct for the first time in Illinois school code. And it also, so it's a two-part law. The first part that passed in December of 2021, it is just that it defined grooming and sexual misconduct. And then the second part, I think, passed in July of 2022. And that was more for prevention. So, if a teacher was going to be looking for a new job at a school, that school, because of part two of Faith's Law, has the responsibility now to do a more extensive background check, to call the school, the previous school where the teacher worked, if the teacher worked at a previous school, and ask if there was any kind of investigation or concerns about misconduct. So it was the first time that grooming and educator sexual misconduct was addressed in a really important way in Illinois law. And so it was just, gosh, yes, just talking about it, just the timing of everything always
Yeah.
blows my mind. And it goes back to what you were saying of just how this has always been so much bigger than just us. Because, yeah, like the first part of the law had just passed months before Sarah had reached out to me. And so Meredith encouraged me to look up Faith Colson. I did look up Faith Colson, and that's how I learned about Faith's Law. And she had also written a couple articles. And I was looking for Faith's contact information, but I couldn't find it anywhere online, which is understandable. So I ended up reaching out to the Congresswoman, Michelle Mussman, State Representative Michelle Mussman, who helped sponsor the bill, who helped sponsor Faith's Law. And she responded within days, and she was willing to ask Faith if I could have her contact information, and Faith agreed. And then you and I, Sarah, met with Faith shortly after that. I want to say it was within 2 weeks of us meeting.
Yes.
We had already had a meeting with Faith Colson. Is there anything that I missed about Faith's Law that you want to add to?
I just want to say that, like, for those of, I mean, I think for you and I guess I shouldn't speak for others, but I feel like knowing Faith feels like you're friends with a rock star or something. Like, she's
Yes.
within the, like, sexual abuse survivor subculture that we are strangely a part of now. It feels like, oh, we got street cred because we, like, know Faith, and
Yeah.
Faith is a listener of the podcast. Hi, Faith. Thanks for supporting us. So
Thank you so much for everything.
you are an amazing, amazing human being. Yeah, it is really crazy to look back and see how quickly we got connected with really important people in this process. Because, yeah, I was looking back at my records as well, and yeah, I got hooked up with Janet Peterson, who was a senator here in Iowa within that first month of me contacting you. And she was and continues to be an amazing human being in general, but person just to work with, because she has been trying to get legislation and bills passed here in Iowa for like years and years and years and years and years, specifically around grooming and sexual abuse and sexual assault of minors. Iowa, unfortunately, is not paving the way, as it were, with our laws and our standards. And it was just so great to get connected with her right away, with somebody who knew the ins and the outs of what's going on here in Iowa, and understood, right? Like, I didn't have to explain to her why these things are important. I didn't have to throw statistics her way. Just hit the ground running with her was such an amazing experience. And then she ended up connecting me with a woman named Bridget. I think I'd have to look back. I think she was working for Janet Peterson at the time in her office. And she was pivotal. Honest to God, like, Bridget, we should find Bridget and probably send her like the biggest care package in the world, because she was the one that figured out that I could file a complaint with the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners. And that domino was so pivotal, nope, so important. Pivotal. Got it.
There you go.
Thank you. To our process, it had to happen. And I thoroughly believe that, like, if the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners hadn't come to the determination that they did in the end, our abuser would still have a job as a teacher in Illinois right now. Like, 100% I believe that. So Now that we're having this big women conversation, I really feel like we should find Bridget and send her some flowers or a muffin or something.
Something. I hope this reaches you, Bridget. Thank you so much.
Bridget. Yeah, because she did the work of looking into the Iowa Board of Education policies because at the time they did have a ruling on their website that said if pretty much it had a statute of limitation. And I think at the time it was like 3 years or something. I'd have to go back and check, but it was a few years and I had by far surpassed that timeline. But she was like, "Let me make some calls." Because she was like, "I know that I've heard that in certain situations they will still investigate even if that statute of limitations has passed. So let me just find out." Whereas like I looked at the website and I was like, "Oh, well, I can't obviously do anything. I can't file anything on to the next plan." And she was the one that found out, "No, you can. Here's the form. Fill it out." And that's what started the whole fucking thing. And interestingly enough, I spoke on a subcommittee just this spring in 2025, and they had a bill to formally remove the statute of limitation on the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners investigations. And it was really cool to be able to just to say, like, if I hadn't met the right people, if I hadn't met Janet Peterson, who got me in contact with Bridget, I would have just assumed by looking at that website I couldn't have filed a complaint, and I wouldn't have. And this person would still be teaching and he would still have access to kids. You need to change it. Like, you have to take it off of your website. And if you're going to do the investigations anyways, like, if you don't really have a statute of limitations, then don't say you do.
Yeah.
Because most people are going to read that and think that they don't have an option. And it passed, and they removed the statute of limitations on their investigations for misconduct in Iowa. What? So that was a pretty cool, like, full circle moment,
Yeah.
right? Anyways, I'm just very impressed that we both got hooked up with like politicians, the right politicians, so
Yes.
quickly in this process is pretty fucking amazing. Because then I had a letter, a victim impact letter, read on the Iowa Senate floor in support of changing the statute of limitation for civil cases in Iowa, which did not pass and still has
Ugh.
not changed and is terrible. And we will get into it when we have a full policy episode. But yeah, so by May 2nd, Diana, I texted you what? April 5th. Okay. So I had my aha moment April 4th. I was in a shower and then all of a sudden realized this wasn't my fault. By May 2nd, I had a victim impact letter read on the Iowa Senate floor.
Yeah. What? Incredible.
What? Like,
and it really is because of your hard work, of course, but the connections that you made, that we made those first few weeks, was those first few days, just so important. Like, what are special situations? You know, what are the special situations that, like, sometimes they'll take a case even if it's after the statute of limitations? Like, it just seems like such an unnecessary barrier that almost is there to deter people from making reports. And I don't know, maybe that's because offices are short staffed or whatever, but then, you know, fund those offices.
Oh my God. Yes. I remember when I filed my police report, also, God, we're getting off subject, but I'm going to say it real fast. I filed the police report and I had to explain to the police officer the actual statute of limitation laws in Iowa because he was like, "Well, we don't have those anymore." And I was like, "Sure." They did remove the statute of limitations for coming forward for child sexual abuse in Iowa. It used to be 12 years. I think. God, I should really double check these numbers before I'm saying these things. I think it was 12 years. Kristen, where are you? But they removed it, but they did not make it retroactive, which meant that if you had already aged out when that bill passed, you're fucked. You can't come forward. And I had to explain that to the police, which was really agitating to have to explain to a police officer the law. I was like, seems like I shouldn't have to do this for you. Why am I telling this story? Oh, because nope, I lost it. What were we talking about?
The deterrence for people reporting.
Oh, God. Okay. Yes. So I was talking to this cop and I had to explain to them the statute of limitation laws. And then he said, well, if they made it retroactive, think about how many people would come forward and how much work that would be for us.
I hate it. That is,
And I was like, you mean you'd have to do your job that our
yes.
taxes pay for?
Yes.
Oh no. Oh no. You're going to have to hold pedophiles accountable?
That is
Gee whiz
abs-
willikers. It was the most, it was not the first and it was not the and will not be the last of just insane shit people said to us along the way of just like, bro, read the room. Like, even if you believe what you're saying, don't say it to me. I am going off, but this is the other thing that's been so frustrating this whole time is people will say in the same breath, they will try to tell you the lie that there are people out here making false accusations,
Mhm.
which the statistics of that is like less than 1% of like allegations of like sexual misconduct for like youth is like that is false is like super rare. It doesn't fucking happen because who the shit wants to go through what we've gone through? This has not been an easy ride, right?
Nope.
So people try to tell you, oh, if you get rid of the statute of limitations, you're going to have all these people come forward and make up lies. Or they try to say, oh, this doesn't really happen that often. This isn't that big of a problem. We don't need to change our policies. This isn't worth new bills. But then they will also say to you, if we get rid of the statute of limitations, think of the tidal wave of people that will come forward. And it's like, those three things cannot be true at the same time. You
That is
can't
just,
say it's not real and there's so many people. Oh, and a bunch of them are lying. Like, it's just,
they're
it
just
doesn't make any
excuses.
sense.
It's just excuses.
Sorry. End of rant. Back off of men that didn't do well, back to women.
I was just thinking we should have a partner episode called Little Men.
The smallest man that ever lived.
Yeah. So you're right. We did hit the ground running, and I'm just so grateful that we got connected with these amazing women. So we had a meeting on April 22nd with Catherine Robb of Child USA. At the time, she was working with Child USA, Senator Peterson, Kylie, who was a lawyer, perhaps
Mm-hmm.
still is a lawyer, and Faith Colson. Catherine Robb was actually on. Did you ever see Scouts Honor, the Netflix documentary about the
Yes.
Boy Scouts? She's
Yes.
interviewed for that
Yeah.
documentary. We got to talk with her back in April
Oh,
2022.
talking with her also felt like a really big deal. Like, that felt like we were talking to the queen bee of child sexual abuse prevention, which we
Yeah.
were. That felt like a very big call. And it felt amazing not only to just be believed, because
Mm.
I think a lot of survivors just fear that, like having to like defend yourself and prove yourself to people. Because unfortunately, there are assholes out there that think we're lying and think we're making this up or that we're psychos or something. So it was just amazing to have all these people just immediately be like, I don't need you to prove this to me. I believe you, because why the fuck would you be reaching out to me right now to have this conversation? Like, what would we get out of it? So it just was amazing to meet these people that were just, they believed us, they were interested, and they were willing to help, and they were willing to give us our time and give us legitimate advice about like, this is what you need to do. These are the steps that you need to take. Have you looked at this? What are the state of the laws? Not even what are the state of the laws. They're telling us these are the states of the laws and the states
Yeah.
that you live at. Like, I remember it being like, Diana, you live in Illinois. It's not so bad. You guys are actually doing pretty great. You've got Faith's Law. And then I was like, Sarah, you live in Iowa. Womp womp. Like, it's real bad. Yeah, it was just so cool to meet people. And so many of them are survivors, which is heartbreaking and devastating, but also there was just a community, like just an immediate community
Immediate. Yeah.
of people that were like, we're here for you. We're proud of you. You guys are doing something that's fucking hard. How can we help you? And we're so fucking lucky. We're so fucking lucky that we met those women as quickly as we did. Cause we would have fucked this whole thing up. I mean, let's be honest. If it had just been you and I, like, left her own devices.
Yeah. Oh, truly. I learned so much in that meeting. It was all very infuriating. And I guess it was
Yeah.
nice to know that Illinois is on the right path. I also learned that the challenges of criminal court versus civil court before that meeting, it was not ever a thing I had to consider. So it was super helpful to have that information. I also learned about the discovery rule. It essentially delays the start of the limitations period to when the person knows or reasonably should have known their
Mm-hmm.
injury. So, for example, with me, because I didn't know about my abuse until 2021, because I live in Illinois, I had 5 additional years
Mm.
from from that date, from that discovery, to press charges. So yeah, it was a super informative meeting that we jumped on,
Yeah.
2 weeks after we met.
Yeah, which was like important for us to kind of have an understanding of the scope. Because I think it's unfortunately, we were uneducated on the subject, which to your point, why should we have been at the time? But we were uneducated on the subject enough that we were like, oh, we now realize what happened to us. We're willing to come forward. We're going to come forward. He's going to get arrested. He's going to lose his job. He's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. We're going to go, tiptoeing through the tulips and slide down a rainbow into a swimming pool of cotton candy. That is not what happened. And I think it was important for us to meet those people so early on and get a little bit of a reality check of like, these are the limitations. This is what's going on. Because it is so much more complicated than you think it's going to be. And it doesn't feel like it should be that complicated because it shouldn't. And then you learn about the laws and you get really pissed off. And then, I feel like we're still learning about laws all the time that we're like, wait, why is that the way that it is? Yeah, I think it was a really informative experience and has led to you and I being really like locked in on what's going on in our states. And that's the crazy thing to think about is for the amount of time and energy that we have poured into all of this and continue to pour in. And like I have spoken on a bunch of subcommittees and written impact statements for a bunch of legislative action, not just here in Iowa, but I just did one in Massachusetts, that they're trying to pass a bunch of bills right now to improve their child sexual abuse laws there. But to think like, bitch, I don't know what's going on in Nebraska. I don't know what's going on in Florida. Like, oh my God. I'm just focused on Iowa because it's where I
Yeah.
live and I directly was impacted by it. So it was really interesting to talk to people that were on a national level, right? And they're trying to do national change. And it's just like, and they're talking to us.
Yeah.
you know, like,
It felt, and it felt like you said, like, okay, the community part, like, it just felt like we all understood each other, like we had some
yeah,
kind of connection. And I think even the Kylie, the lawyer, if I remember correctly, she is from Iowa. So
yeah.
I think for her too, it was just really personal.
And she also had spoken in a lot of support of a lot of legislative stuff here in Iowa as well. And I don't know, I didn't know her before, but she might have also spoken in support of the bill that removed the statute of limitations in Iowa. The year before I found you is when Iowa overturned their statute of limitations for violence, sexual abuse against minors, becoming the 14th state to eliminate the statute of limitations for these horrendous crimes. In 2021, only 14 states had removed the statute of limitations for sexual abuse related crimes to minors.
That is less than half. That is so bad.
I don't know what the statistic is now. This is from 2021. But just to circle back, Iowa before that, the limit was 10 or 15 years, which is confusing. And I don't know where the or comes into play there. But yes, so they did remove that, but Iowa still has a statute of limitation on civil charges, which you were saying before, Diana, kind of learning the difference between those two was an important aspect of our journey. And Iowa is still terrible, and it's 1 year. So I lost the right
Oh
to
my God. How is
I
it? What?
Yep,
Sorry, go
it
ahead.
still has not changed. I have said this many times to politicians. I lost the right to press civil charges while I was still being abused by the teacher. I was 19. Like I was still actively being abused by him when I lost the rights to press charges against him on a civil level.
The law just doesn't make any sense at all.
No. No, it does not. And that is, God damn it, while we're doing this podcast, because this podcast is not only about you and I, it's not only about our experience and our terrible teacher that abused us. It is the bigger fucking picture. And the bigger picture is that this shit is broken and it doesn't make any sense. And there are good people out there like my girl Janet Peterson, who is trying to get this shit changed. And it is mind-boggling to me how these politicians will sit and vote against improving protections against minors being sexually abused. I don't understand it, and it's infuriating. And every time I explain this to any parent or any human being that I know, they're horrified. So I hope that more people are learning and more people are getting pissed off so that more people can pay attention and get involved and voice their opinions about these bills. It's a lot of work paying attention to bills. I will say that. Like, there's so much happening all the time, and the world is a fucking dumpster fire right now. And there's so much shit going down. I would just say pick your thing that you really care about, right? And for you and I, it is this. And that makes it very easy because we can focus on these laws and these policies in our own backyard. And hopefully inciting some change in those policies. But yeah, we got hooked up with some real big badass women pretty early on.
Hashtag big women. Sarah, we had expressed in our last full episode that we're not the biggest fans of sanctioned pedophilia. Can you tell us who does lobbying in the state of Iowa for keeping these horrible laws upheld?
The Catholic Church, my dear friend, and I'm sure it's not just in Iowa. They spend a lot of money paying lobbyists to convince people to vote against these laws. And one of their arguments is that how many tax dollars it will cost to like investigate these claims.
Jesus Christ, no pun intended. What?
Well, that's because they know, because here's the deal. It's specifically statute of limitations for civil, because girl, I'm gonna get my sass sued by the Catholic Church. So let's just go into like very high level criminal charges versus civil charges. Criminal charges is like how you get somebody in jail, right? And the burden of proof for a criminal charge is like what, 98%. It's pretty much like beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Like it's murder, it's robbery, it's rape, it's whatever, any of these crimes. And we had a crime committed against us which could classify as a criminal offense. It was a criminal activity to have sex with a minor, which you and I both were when our teacher abused us. The burden of proof is very high, as it should be, because otherwise anybody or their brother could come out of the woodwork and say, fucking Diana shot my dog. You know what I mean? And you'd be like, what the fuck? And like, if I can't prove it, then you can't go to jail, right? If the burden of proof was low, you'd end up in jail because I just said something. So I don't ever want this to sound like I think the burden of proof should be lower for criminal charges, because that would be dangerous in a lot of other ways. But for sexual abuse and sexual assault, a lot of times it is very hard to prove because there's not a lot of evidence, right? These things are happening in the shadows. At the time, you and I thought we were in love with this person. We thought we were in a relationship with this person. You know, any correspondence we were having with them, we were told to keep secret or destroy. Like, evidence was being destroyed on purpose because we were keeping a secret, because that's what we were groomed to do. So it's very, very hard to get criminal charges on sexual abuse. I think the statistics on the outcome for like, if you even file for a criminal charge, that person ending up serving time is super fucking low. Like, I think I was just looking at it the other day and it's like fucking 10% or something. It is crazy low. And we can look into the actual numbers of that. It's very low. It's very unlikely. So that is why civil lawsuits are really, really important, because sometimes, most of the time, it is the only way that you can hold somebody accountable. Like OJ, right? OJ was found not guilty in his criminal case, and he was found guilty in a civil case that her family came forward with, and he had to pay them a bunch of damages for murdering their fucking family member. So this is why civil charges are important, because it gives people the ability to have somebody held accountable in some way when they cannot have them held criminally accountable. So if the statute of limitations changes in Iowa from 1 year to no statute of limitation, and it's retroactive, anybody and their brother who is alive today who was ever sexually abused by a member of the Catholic Church or any other church, let's be honest, it's not just the Catholics that be having this problem, could come out of the woodwork and sue them for a shitload of money, and they don't want to pay it. That's it. That's it. It's just
Ugh.
about money. That's it. That's all it is, because they don't want to have to pay. Just like the Boy Scout settlement you just talked about, Scouts Honor documentary. Because of Iowa's statute of limitation laws on civil cases, the huge settlement case that happened with all of those like hundreds, what was it, 800 survivors or something were part of that class action lawsuit. The survivors in Iowa were going to get pennies on the dollar because they did not have the right in the state of fucking Iowa to press civil charges. And our governor, fucking Kim Reynolds, when presented with this as a great example of why this should change, here's this giant story the entire country knows about. There's a documentary about it. There's all these articles written about it. There's survivors from Iowa coming forward saying, hey, the least that can come out of this is I get some kind of payout out of this huge class action lawsuit. But because of Iowa's terrible fucking laws, I'm not even going to get that, right? I'm going to get a lesser version of that. And instead of taking that and thinking, oh, I should remove the statute of limitations on criminal charges for child sexual abuse, she made an exception for them and them alone so they could get their
Wow.
money, but nobody
Wow.
else.
Well, and bitch ain't running again. So
She's not running again,
bye.
but I am also very concerned that she's going to try to go to DC and run for something more important. So watch your butts.
Watch
Watch your
your
butts.
butts for Kim Reynolds.
Ooh,
Red
Kim
flag.
Reynolds. Not a
Red
fan.
flag
Not a
alert.
fan of Kim Reynolds. That is not a big woman on our
That's
list.
what I was gonna say. Kim
No.
Reynolds is no big woman. Sarah, thank you for that super clear breakdown of civil laws and criminal laws. For civil court, I wrote down from our meeting with Catherine Robb, Senator Peterson, Kylie, and Faith that only 51% needs to be
Mhm.
proved in civil court. So, like you said, yeah, the burden of
Mhm.
proof is much lower, and it is a way for victims to get some kind of justice.
Yes, I mean, they got their settlement, but it just sucks because there should have been a bigger lesson learned in that moment, which is
Mhm.
we should change this for everybody. And I feel like she 100% only changed it for them because she was getting bad coverage because
Yeah,
everybody knew that story. It's a terrible story. And those poor fucking children, I mean, same fucking thing, dude. They knew it was happening. They were passing the trash. They were moving these abusers around. They weren't removing them. They weren't doing background checks. But again, it's money, dude. Like they just didn't want to have to like be held accountable. So yes, there
right. So
it's
they got the
it's
settlement, but like no one else
no one else did.
got the same kind of
Rights. Like
yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
because if they had changed it, you know, I mean, they still wouldn't make it retroactive. They would probably do like they did with the criminal statute of
Yeah.
limitation, which was non-retroactive, so it wouldn't matter. Like for me personally, but that's fine. Like I don't care about my ability to press charges anymore or like do a civil lawsuit, but I sure as shit wish that other people had more of a right to do it and more of a window to come forward.
Going back to that meeting that we had with Faith. So I reached out to Faith on April 15th. You and I met with her, I want to say 2 or 3 days later. I don't
Okay.
remember the exact date. But in that meeting, one of the things that I had wanted to talk to her about is what it was like for her, like after she came forward,
Mhm.
because I was wondering whether or not I was going to file a police report. And so she's the only person I knew who had done that, who had filed a police report against her abuser. And it was really helpful to get her side of how she navigated that. That meeting is what convinced me that filing a police report is the next step that I wanted to take. And
Mhm.
that happened April 19th. So
Wow.
we met with Faith.
Man,
I know. I know.
it's so fast. Like in retrospect, I almost feel like I almost look back and I'm just like, I want to be like, you guys, it's okay. Like,
I
take a breath.
know.
Like, but at the same time, the whole process did take for fucking ever. So I guess I'm glad we hit the ground running.
Yeah. And I think part of it was too that we were getting a lot of information. We were meeting a lot of people. We had I felt supported. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
I think why I just kept going. There was just so much coming in And
Mhm.
when I get activated, I'm an energizer bunny. Like I just want to keep at it. After meeting with Faith, I did the police report. And then after the police report is actually when we had that big meeting with five big women.
5 big women. Oofta. Yeah, I would say the police reports were probably my least favorite experience of the whole thing, just because they needed so much information and so many details. It was so uncomfortable to talk about with a man that you've never met. And I had to do mine over the phone because of where I live. So it
Yeah.
was like extra awkward sauce. But yes, we can talk about that next time. And I want to circle back that less than 4% of reported rapes, sexual assaults, and child sexual abuse allegations end in a conviction.
Less than 4%.
Less than 4%. So, when people talk about civil lawsuits, this is why they're really fucking important. Because less than 4% of criminal lawsuits, or I shouldn't say lawsuits, less than 4% of sex crimes. I guess I don't know if that means they made it all the way to court. I'm not sure if that is 4% of all reported sex crimes or 4% of all crimes that end in a court case. Because not all reported sex crimes actually go to trial.
Ah, I see. Yes.
Does that make sense? So I'm
Yes.
not sure if that 4% is of that go to trial or just reported. Less than 4% of reported rapes, sexual assaults, and child sex abuse allegations end in convictions. And that is like an average. So it's very low. I think a lot of people view civil lawsuits as a money grab. And then that's where it gets really like, oh, well, she's lying and she's just out here for money because, that's all fucking women are, is fucking gold diggers or something in some people's minds. And if you don't understand the requirements for a criminal lawsuit, or you don't understand the statute of limitations in the state that person is living in, the civil case can be the only step that somebody can take, the only way they can have somebody held accountable. And there is a financial aspect to surviving abuse. Like, we are in therapy. Do you know how much money you and I have spent on therapy just talking about this shit? Like, that alone justifies a criminal or a civil lawsuit. Like, motherfucker, why am I paying for this? And there is adverse outcomes for health, right? Like, we're going to have higher rates of cancer and heart disease and all these different medical outcomes from the trauma of having been sexually abused as minors. Like, those are facts. That is a price that you and I are going to pay for the rest of our lives. And I think a lot of people just don't understand that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that money undoes any of that and that money makes any of those things better, but there is a true financial cost for the survivors, and they are owed some kind of consolation or some kind of way to offset that financial aspect of it. And for some people, it's also they can't work, man. Like they freak out or they can't function or whatever. There's a myriad of outcomes, but I don't know. I want to put that out there because I just think some people have a very black and white, oh, if it's not criminal, that means it didn't happen. That's not fucking true. If it's civil, they're just out for money. It's just not fucking true. Like, it's just not how it is. So I want people to understand the reasoning why people follow up with civil lawsuits and why, like in the state of Iowa, Janet Peterson and so many other people are trying to get these standards changed because it is super important for survivors.
Money isn't going to fix everything, right? But money does provide people with options. Like it gives people resources, and that's something. The next thing that we talk about, the next chapter of this story should be our original
what we thought
plan.
we were going to do. Yes,
what we thought we were going to do. Because again, we met virtually. You text me April 5th. We meet virtually April 7th. April 9th, you are sending me your letter. And by your letter, I mean what we thought we were going to be doing, our plan A, which was we were going to be sending letters to the school where our abuser worked, the school district, the Illinois State Board of Education. I think we had planned on doing media.
Oh, girl. We were about to fuck it all up.
We were. And I was looking at my calendar, and I think We had planned on sending our letters the same day that I did the police report. So I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, okay, yes, we will talk about that. Yes, I think it's a good idea. I'm looking forward to getting into it. I feel like we might have to edit our letters if you're planning on reading your letter, because I think our letters were a little bit more detailed than perhaps we want to get into on
Oh,
this
yeah,
podcast.
for sure. Our first letters, especially mine, very bitey. I don't know how else to
Mhm.
say it. Just very sharp, very
Spicy.
angry,
A little spicy.
a little
Yeah.
spicy.
Yeah, no, we can get into it. I don't know. I think we're going to need to like fact check half the things I just said in this episode, but I think I was right about most of it. This is why we need our volunteer researcher to help us
Yeah,
out.
we
Fact check.
plan to
Maybe we
bring
make her
on.
listen to this episode as her first homework assignment and she double checks the shit we said.
Ooh, I like it.
Ooh,
Okay,
I
let's
think
do
that's a
that.
good idea versus
I
her
like
just
it.
like rogue trying to research things. Just be like, make sure we're not blatantly making up information here.
Yeah, so if we are, we can add some corrections at the
Yeah.
beginning or end,
Or we can
or
just like
do it over.
re-record that little spot. Yeah.
There you go.
So thanks for listening to our podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Let us know what you think. We've got an email address. We've got an Instagram account. We got
We have
a
a website.
website. What?
Sarah, what is our website?
Blooming af nope.
Yes, I
I
think
had
you
it.
were right.
Ask me again.
Sarah, what's our website?
bloomingafterpod.com, where you can find all of our episodes, resources, and recommendations to the different things that we mention in our episodes. There's also a contact us form if you've got questions, comments, suggestions for a groom scroll episode. Girl, there's all kinds of stuff on there.
And we also have an Instagram. Speaking of Instagram, I think you mentioned Instagram. Which is also called Blooming After Pod. And yeah, our Gmail, bloomingaftergrooming@gmail.com.
Yeah, if we ever
And
hear
yeah.
anything from anybody, we'll let you know.
Oh, also, let's mention that there is a slight schedule change in how we release our podcasts. We're doing 2 episodes a week, and we have discovered that that is just too much right now. So we're going to do weekly full episodes on Mondays still, and then we will release Groom Scroll episodes every other Wednesday. And we'll see how that goes for now.
Yeah, because it turns out, plot twist, podcasts are a lot of work and we have jobs and lives and it's a lot.
I'm really glad that we did this episode. It was an opportunity for me to look back and remind myself of how it started. In my notes after that meeting with Faith, one of my last bullet points is thank yous question mark. So I think if I remember correctly, in my mind, I was like, I need to start keeping track of a thank you list because I'm about to meet so many people who are going to help me and change my life. So, one last time, thank you so much to, well, not one last time because I know I'll say it again, but again, thank you to Faith and Catherine, Senator Peterson, Representative Mussman, Kylie, and Bridget. How could
And
we forget
Bridget.
Bridget? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Big women.
Bottom of our hearts, could literally not have done it without them. So yeah, I think we should circle back on your thank you card. We could get some cute stationery. Like we could do some sweet cards for them. Have you thanked a big woman today, dear listener? Who are women that's helped you get to where you're at? Are you someone's big woman? Last time I think I said share the podcast with one man. This week your homework assignment is tell one big woman thank you.
I love it. You know what? There's just so much. There's so much. This dumpster fire of a world. Tell a big woman thank you. I'm sure it'll make her day.
Maybe don't call her a big woman. I don't know. That's your call.
You know what? Call her a big woman. Ain't nothing wrong with being a big woman.
It depends on the
Size-wise.
woman and how she's going to take it, though. Not every woman
Okay.
would like it. So
All right.
proceed with
You're
caution.
right. And thank you for listening.
Yes. Tune in next time.
And
okay, bye.
bye. And then Dan, I gave him third place because he had my Bulls crop top hoodie and my drink harness that I got one night when I was just super drunk and impulse shopping. Yeah, I told him, I was like, you know what? I think I really like you in crop tops. I think I might buy you some crop tops now because you look good.